Einen schönen guten Abend. Ich freue mich sehr, dass Sie meiner Einladung gefolgt und heute Abend wieder mit dabei sind, wenn ich mich mit einem sehr interessanten Menschen unterhalte. Er ist ein Menschenverbinder und nutzt dazu die Macht der Musik und des Tanzes. Das Ganze über viele Jahrzehnte. Es sind unzählige Projekte daraus entstanden und er arbeitet mit Erwachsenen und mit Kindern rund um die Welt. Das hat nicht nur die geprägt, die mit ihm gearbeitet haben, sondern auch ihn selbst. Begrüßen Sie mit mir heute Abend Royston Maldoom. Welcome to our studio. Welcome to this show.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here. So let's talk a bit about your life. And
Okay.
all what I just introduced. So, childhood. Where did you grow up? And what was the most important part of that time for you?
Okay, childhood was a little difficult because my father was away in the RAF, in the Royal Air Force, and my mother, maybe it's difficult to know whether it was through giving birth to me or whatever, she only lived for 4 years. And so at that time, when she died, I didn't know where she'd gone. My father had to put me in a children's home for about 6 months. And because he was very angry with her, for whatever reason, personal reasons, he wouldn't allow her family to take me out of the home. They used to come and visit me, and I used to plead with them to take me away, but in the end, they didn't come because they couldn't bear it. So I was there. Then my father remarried, and my stepmother came to meet me and took me to her mother's home in the countryside. And I think it was very difficult for her. She told me I was a very difficult child. I behaved very badly. I was very aggressive. And she had a hard time with me. And my father, I stayed in the countryside from the age of 4 till 8, which I loved very much, really loved. I was free to roam and free to, to climb trees and chase rabbits and everything else, and learned a lot about the nature at that time. And then my father was demobbed from the RAF, and he came home and took us to a satellite town of London, where actually I was born. And there I lived. I had 2 stepsons, step-brothers, and one 6 years younger than me, and one much later, 18 years younger. And there we lived, and there I went to school, to primary school. And I think I was just a very difficult child for my stepmother to handle. She had a short fuse, I have to say. And I didn't trust adults. That was my problem.
In general. In general.
In general. I had a mistrust of adults and their motives and so on. And so both for my father, who was a very gentle man, and for my mother, who was a little more short-tempered, I think it was very difficult. They did their best. I now realize they did their best for me. They did what they could, and I was well fed, and I was well dressed. And they did what they could. But I think it was just very difficult. I was untrustworthy, untrusting.
Why was that? Why was that?
I think I just had been pushed around a little bit too much. I have 2 photos of my real mother as a baby, and clearly she adored me and I adored her. You can see from the photos. And then she disappeared. Then I'm in a children's home where I'm very unhappy. I don't know why I'm there. Then comes a new mother, who I don't know. Then my father comes home, who I hardly know as well. And so I think I just didn't know what adults were doing with me.
So always some kind of unexpected things coming up.
Yeah, and but anyway, I went to good primary school, and I was coached by my father. He decided that I had to be academic and I had to go to grammar school. And I wouldn't have gone without this coaching that he gave me. And I got into grammar school and was basically in the bottom class all the way through, and not very happy with schooling. But anyway, when it came to sitting for my, what we called O-level exams at 16, for some reason I just crammed and I passed them all. So my father was very, very happy and saw a university career for me. And I went on for 1 year at 17 to take my advanced levels. And then I just had enough. I had enough of home, and one day after an argument, I walked out and I went to work on a farm.
Okay. So back to nature, so to say.
Back to nature, yeah.
And after that time, you worked for how long on a farm?
I worked for, I think it must have been about 18 months doing an apprenticeship. And at that time, if you wanted to go on to college, you got automatically a grant. You didn't get student loans, put you into debt like now. And so you got a grant. And so I went to agricultural college, and I didn't really like it. And I left after a year, and I went back to farming.
Why didn't you like it?
It was too technical. It was all about technical. I liked animals. I liked animal husbandry, looking after sheep and cows and whatever, and plowing and so on. And there was too much mechanization in it and so on. And
theoretical background?
Sorry?
Theoretical background?
Yeah, a lot of that. And I just wanted to do the practice. And I was always impatient anyway. And so I left. I went back to Wales, where I had been working on a farm, sheep farm. And then one day, the farmer said, you know, you are such a great worker. I want now to offer you a permanent contract, and we give you a cottage, and you have a car, and whatever. And I panicked. I just had the feeling it was too soon. I said, no, I can't.
How old were you, about 19, 20?
I was probably around 20 years old. And I don't know why, I just knew it was too soon. I just saw the future stretching ahead of me in this sort of comfortable way. And something told me this is not right. So I'd always been good at art. So I applied to Swansea College of Art, Swansea in Wales. And I got on the train and I went to Swansea, and I got off the train, and at the last minute I jumped back on the train. And I went back.
Did you have any kind of wish for your future?
No, everything was just unsure. I just didn't know. I just had this feeling that I was making the wrong decisions. I didn't know what was waiting. I went back to the first farm, did some ploughing for 6 months, and then he said, I had a request from a very eccentric doctor in Cambridge who has an open house, lots of young revolutionary people living there. And she has a cow in her garden and turkeys and so on, and her person who looks after them is away on holiday. Do I have somebody that could replace her? So I said, yes, okay, I'll go. And I went and I stayed for 2 years.
Okay.
And I met all sorts of revolutionary people from Argentina and Chile and Peru, and people from Scandinavia who were extolling free love and all this sort of stuff. And it was a great education.
We come to this later about the traveling, but
yeah.
Do you think today that this influenced you in a way, meeting so many people from other countries?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It politicized me, and even later, when I went to London, I was sort of adopted by South African Jews who had been part of the African National Congress and had to flee South Africa. They were communists and had arrived in London, and they took me in because that's another story.
Were
But
you a political person by that time?
I
Or was
had,
it
I had become,
else?
my father, who I resisted enormously and said I was conservative, was a Labour man through and through. And he was a printer and a trade unionist, and so I rebelled against him absolutely. But slowly, I realized that I'm a chip off the old block, and that I was a socialist, left-leaning, and so on. So all of this was forming part of my, I guess, my personality as I became an adult. It was beginning to coalesce. But I still didn't know what I was going to do. When I went to Cambridge and was living there, there was a dancer called Gabor Kosser, who had fled the Nazis with the Kurt Joost Company. They were a Jewish company, and they'd come to this house in Cambridge, and there they had worked together before they dismantled. And Gabor kind of took a shine to me, and he had opened an antique shop, and he started to teach me about antiques and so on. So that was where I thought maybe I was going. And then one day my friend said, oh, we're going to see a film, Evening of the Royal Ballet, with the new defector Rudolf Nureyev from Russia. I said, oh, well, I'm not interested. What's that? You know, men dancing on their toes, I thought. But I said, okay.
You liked dancing by that time?
No, not particularly. No.
Was just a part of it? Nothing
Just,
special?
no, I just said, okay, I'll go, because afterwards we always went to the pub. We had a joint and we had a beer and so on, so I didn't want to miss out. So I went and I saw this film. Now, I was a very, very active person, but I didn't like sport. I wasn't competitive. But I loved to run and jump and climb and whatever. And I was a farmer, so I loved all that activity, all the muscles in the wrong places. And so I went to see the film, and I came out, and something went ping. I'm going to be a dancer. And I was 22. And nobody became a dancer in those days, in the 60s. At 22, you started. It was unheard of.
Normally people start earlier.
Very early, yeah. And I mean, male dancers could start a bit later, maybe around 12 or so on. I was 22, it was unheard of. But I said, no, I'm going to be. So 3 days later, I went to a local ballet school, Miss Betty King, who taught little girls and big girls. And I said, what can I do for you? I said, I'm going to be a dancer. And she said, you mean as a hobby? I said, no, I'm going to be a professional. And I think she was astonished. And she said, well, I don't know. She said, have you got any money? I said, no, I've got no money, but, you know, I will do your garden or your house or whatever you want doing and so on. So she gave me a few exercises and sent me away, come back in a week, let's see how you're doing, clapping and stretching and so on. I went back and she said, you're quite fit. Okay, we give it a try. So the dressing room for the men had been empty for 13 years. So there I was, and I had to do it with the little girls and the bigger girls and the bigger girls, all the grades and everything, 6 hours a day and whatever.
Isn't there a competition between these ages and the better ones and not so good ones?
Yeah, I mean, most of the girls, for instance, wouldn't go on to be dancers. It's just what girls did. They went to the ballet school at the weekend or in the evening or something. And for me, it was just, I just decided there's nothing else I would do. This is what I was going to do. I had found...
Like a flash.
Something like this. And so 3 days later, I enrolled, and she taught me for a year. She said, I'll give you a try. And she said, I think you have some talent, and I can't teach you anymore. Go to London.
Did you have any plan by this time how your career as a dancer would be?
I was going to be Rudolf Nureyev. I was going to be a great dancer, whatever. I was soon disillusioned of that, but that didn't matter. I wanted to dance. And so I studied with her a year. She said, I can't do any more. Go to London. So I went to London, and for a while I was homeless and slept in parks and cinemas and God knows what else. And I went to one school, Stella Mann School and did the same thing and said to her, I'm going to be a dancer. And she was astonished, said, do you have any money? And I said, no, the same thing. All right, I'll give you a chance. But she was doing a kind of Laban modern dance and ballet and tap and ballroom. She said, you do everything. You're going to do everything. And so I did. And I was with her for about 1.5 years. And then I decided where did I go next? I went to the Rambert School.
Were there any kind of performances during that time on stages?
Yes, I kind of blush. I remember one where I was a dancing snowman, jumping up in the air and twiddling my feet. And I blush to think of it, but I was very proud at the time. And she felt that I had really some kind of choreographic talent. Anyway, after a while, I had to leave and I had to go and do musicals and pantomimes and so on, which I absolutely hated. This is not what I wanted to do, show dance. But I did them to earn money. And then I heard about the Rambert School, which is a very famous school run by someone who had also fled the Nazis years before. And I went to see her daughter and said, I want to be a dancer. And she said, okay, we'll give you a chance. Let's see what you can do. And at that time, she had a teacher who was a teacher of Martha Graham technique, which had been imported from the USA recently into the UK. And so I had the advantage of learning that as well, which was an entirely different technique, very grounded on the floor and so on. And I worked with her for 1 year, and then again I went back to do some work. And one day...
By that time you were about 27, 28, right?
Oh, my goodness, no. I'm probably about 20... Yes, maybe 26, maybe. And 25, 26. And then one day she called me and said, look, I think she lied. She said one of the parents had given me the fee for their student, which I wasn't expecting. There's a international choreographic competition in France, in Bagnolet, in a month's time. You come and take 3 of my dancers, make a piece, and I will send you to Bagnolet.
If you talk about a piece, maybe you can just explain a little bit to our audience what is a piece.
Make a choreography. And so I went and took 2 dancers and we worked all day and nothing worked. I wanted to work to the Mahler 5th Symphony Adagietto.
How long is such a dance?
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
And it didn't work. And the next day, another friend of ours came to watch, and he said, oh, can I join? And I said, okay. And with the 3 of them, in about 5 hours, we'd made the whole 10-minute piece, Adagietto, which was really quite revolutionary. It was just different. It was very gymnastic. It was based on my experiences a lot in farming with the mountains and the birds flying and all sorts of...
You mixed it all in.
Yeah. And I sort of called it figure into landscape. But anyway, so I made this piece and we went to Paris and competed against Canadian companies and all sorts of companies from around Europe, and I won.
So, you told me before that you don't like competitions.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I don't see what the point is for artists. I mean, you're competing against yourself. Why would you be competing against someone else? Because, I mean, it's like when I won this competition, the next problem is how to sustain that. What if I can't do another piece? And if I hadn't won, would I be a failure? You know, this whole thing seems to be counterproductive in the arts. Anyway, I won it, and 2 months later, I was invited to go back with a small program with the same 3 dancers, and to make 3 pieces and present them at Bagnolet, Pont-à-Mousson. And it was an international choreographic competition again, and I won again, £1,000. My goodness.
Which was a lot of money by that
A
time.
lot of money. And I thought, I'm a choreographer. That's what I am. That's what I want to do. Not dance, but be choreographer.
Okay. So I feel that is kind of a break
Okay.
in your life.
Yes.
So from that moment on, there was something new
Yes.
coming up.
Yeah.
Und wir werden uns jetzt anschauen, was das ist in seinem Leben. Wie ging es weiter? Wenn man in ein weiteres Berufsleben schreitet, ist es immer der Plan, der zählt. From that moment on, when you reached these points, did you have a plan by that for your upcoming career life?
No, other than that I realized that I had some kind of ability to create dance with professionals. I had no idea with other people or whatever. I was a professional. And so when I won this prize, Angela Ellis, who had sent me there, she said, I'm going to bring a man from the education officer from the Royal Ballet. I want you to show him this piece.
That was a part of acceptance, right? That
Yes,
you were.
yes.
Now you were the professional.
Yeah, so he came and he looked. His name was Leslie Edwards. I'll never forget him. And he said, this is amazing. And we're having an open workshop where Royal Ballet dancers can present their own pieces. And I think I will invite you, although you're not a Royal Ballet dancer, I would like you to show this piece. So
What does it mean when you say you are invited? I mean, all these things, traveling, hotels, working with people.
Well, it was still in London. It was still in London.
Yeah, but you went to Paris before.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All that was all that's paid for.
Yeah, that is paid for.
Yeah, all that's paid for. So he came, he saw it, and he invited me to the next open workshop, where a lot of people came to see and whatever. And at the end of the workshop, the director of the Royal Ballet came to me and said, we are going to offer you a scholarship to study choreography at the Royal Ballet for 1 year. Again, I said, well, I don't have any money. They said, don't worry. We call the Arts Council. They're going to pay. We've checked. And you can come and sit in the studio. You can do classes with the Royal Ballet dancers. Terrifying. Margot Fontaine, Rudolph Nureyev, everybody.
Okay.
And me.
But it was your goal to be
Yeah.
the biggest one.
And I was very shy there, but the dancers were nice to me. And so I was able to see visiting choreographers, Sir Frederick Ashton, Glenn Tetley, other people, able to sit in the studio and watch them working and learn a lot. But funnily enough, the director of the Royal Ballet School used to sit with me in the canteen, and she thought I was a cleaner. She was very nice, and she used to talk to me for a long time. She didn't know that I was on this scholarship. Anyway, I had to make a piece for some group of Royal Ballet dancers, and that was okay. And I was there, but actually I wanted to get on. I was kind of, something was not quite right. And then Alvin Ailey, who found the first sort of all-black Puerto Rican company from New York, came to Sadler's Wells in London. And I went to see him with an Israeli girlfriend of mine. And I saw these dancers and Revelations, his famous piece. And I said, oh, I want to work with them. I want to work with them. I want to learn from them.
As a dancer or as a choreographer?
As anything, just to learn, to be there. So exciting. And after the performance, she said, oh, stay here, I go to the toilet. And she was away a long time. And she came back and said, Alvin Ailey wants to meet you tomorrow at his apartment and to have a cup of coffee and talk. I said, how did that happen? She said, I went and said to him, I have a friend who's a very talented choreographer, and if you don't meet him, you will be very unhappy. He said, okay, send him round.
That's a good introduction.
Yes, so I went and met Alvin, this big Afro-American figure, beautiful man. And he said, okay, Royston, take again 3 of my dancers, make a little piece. We're here for another week. I'll have a look and we'll see. So I made some kind of sequence of choreography. He said, oh, you're in the wrong place. This is not the place for you. He said, come to New York. You're coming to New York. And I said, I don't have any money. He said, I'm phoning the Arts Council again, and they're going to do it.
So everybody just called somebody?
Yeah. They called the Arts Council.
The money came in?
Yeah. And I went to New York, and it was a revelation. I mean, it was just totally different. I met these extraordinary Black and Puerto Rican dancers who were just full of, it wasn't just dance, it was about something. It was about their experiences as Black people. It was about so much. And this resonated with me. And I loved being with them. And they were very kind to me.
How did you feel about the city itself?
New York was terrifying. I mean, I was a young gay man living in conservative Britain. And I went to New York where everything was exploding. And I was absolutely terrified. I didn't know what was going on. But I learned. I'm quick to adapt. And the whole experience was strange. I mean, people were fast. Everything was moving fast. But I went to see performances. And an old man who had heard about me invited me into his home and said, you stay here and you can go every day to the thing and come back and everything. So that was great.
Is it true that if you read that sometimes that you, as a passionist, you go to the theater, to the movies, to the ballet, dance every evening, every night?
Because he had a ticket to the Metropolitan Opera. So we
permanent ticket.
A permanent ticket, a seat. And also, in the early evening, we would go to an alternative, see alternative performances, and then we would have some supper, and then we would go to the Metropolitan Opera to see Balanchine and Tetley and all these great choreographers. So anyway, I did my 6 months there. While I was there, I was asked to make a piece for a group of 3 dancers again called First Chamber Dance New York. And
Is it more difficult to make it for 3 than for 30? Or
no, making it for 30 is like making it for 3. You just make the
difference.
So I made a piece for them. And then while I was there, somebody from Bermuda, Civic Ballet, asked Alvin, is there somebody who would come and do our summer performances choreographer? And he said, I'll send Royston. So I went there. While I was there, 2 of the dancers who had danced Adagietto, my first piece, had been picked up by the director of the San Marcos Ballet in Peru, who was changing from classical to contemporary, and they showed her the piece. And she said, bring him, bring him, bring him. I want him as the first choreographer for this new company. And so from Bermuda, I went straight to Peru in 1973. And they sat me down in the studio, and I had to make 5 pieces in about 5 weeks. And they just sat me down, and I worked for an hour on 1 piece, and then the director came, give him coffee, give him this, next. And I made 5 pieces, and it was a sensation, apparently.
If you work on these pieces, how do you do that? I mean, the human body has 2 arms, 2 legs, and something in the middle. So is it, in a way, if you create things like this to music, is it like writing a song or creating a book? Or?
Yeah, the thing is, I had to make a program, their first program as a contemporary company. So I had to have a serious piece and a funny piece and a light piece and a political piece. I had to kind of do these different pieces. So
you put these movements together.
So I made, I did the Adagietto, and then I did a piece to Stravinsky, 3 pieces for solo clarinet, and another piece, I was trying to remember, don't know what it was, and another, and made a complete program. So the way I work is I can't really plan anything. I'm a terrible planner. So I'm always very vulnerable. I go in the studio and I go, okay, do that. Whatever comes in my head. And then do that, and then do that. And bit by bit, the piece seems to take a form, or I mold it into something that I want. It's hard. I don't know where it comes from.
Do you come back to things you have done before?
Often. Now I do, yes. In those days, not. It was all new. And I don't know where it comes from. And when I look back on pieces, I don't remember doing them. Where did that come from? I can't remember. I must have been somewhere else when I was creating this thing. It's just coming in and I do it. So I learned, because I can't plan anything, I'm hopeless, just to trust my instinct, see who comes into the room and just do something. Roll on or run on or do anything to get me started. And then once that's started, boom, I can go to the end. So yes, I went there and I did that, and that started a long relationship since 1973 with the company in Peru. I've done many, many programs for them, and also started a youth program in 2004, which still goes.
That is something until then you worked with normal professionals, dancers.
Yeah.
So suddenly you began to work with kids, to work with prisoners, to work with people normally nobody works with. So
Well, I was working professionally with. I also went back to Harlem. Went to Dance Theatre of Harlem because when Arthur Mitchell, the director of the next black company, very famous, came to London. I can't remember how it happened. Oh yes, he went to London, then went to Birmingham with the company, and it was a Monday afternoon, and I had made my adagietto piece for Northern Ballet Company. And the dancers all didn't know what to do in the afternoon. It was rainy, and they heard this program was on with this local company. So they went, and they came back and said, you have to see this piece, you have to see this piece. We want to dance this piece. And the principal dancer, Virginia, she said, I want this piece, because it was for 2 men and 1 woman. And so he came, and he said, where can I find this guy? And they told him. And he called me and said, I want you to come to New York next week. Mm-hmm. Okay. And everything's there, and we're going to give you everything what you need and whatever. And
Isn't that a complicated life if you just you go to New York next week? Okay, going to Peru a month later, going to Paris tomorrow?
Arthur was a bit of a monster, and he said, yep, you're coming next week, and I've sorted it all out, and the tickets are there, and whatever. And come along and choose your dancers tomorrow. So I went to the studio where they were doing that class, and I chose somebody called Stephanie Dabney, 2 big black guys and Stephanie. And she was wonderful. I just knew this was the girl. And I said, I want her. And he said, oh, but she's just an apprentice. Okay, I'd better put her in the company immediately. So I made that for Stephanie, and I went back and made 3 pieces, I think 3 or 4 pieces for them over the years. So yes, that was Dance Theatre of Harlem and Northern Ballet and small groups and Hong Kong and here, and started to go out.
How do you see the potential in people?
Well, I just see the potential. I mean, if I had that potential and didn't know, then I assume everybody else has that potential and doesn't know. I mean, I was lucky. Something just popped in my life. I lived in the moment. I saw it, and I took advantage of it. But I think a lot of people have learned that they are not capable, or they're not, they learn maybe from their parents, say, oh, it's not very good, not very this, or the teacher, this person. I meet a lot of that, the teachers, well, I give you this kid as well, he can try it, and not very good, and I go, don't tell me that. You know, that's private. He doesn't know anything about me. I don't know anything about him. You mustn't do it. And this kid would come on, and I always gave them a solo. Always. Boom. And I just learned that everybody has potential, but they have to often be helped out of it. And that there is this thing I always call the adoptive kind, the adopted child, like I was adopted. And I realized that you are not who you think you are always. You are a composite of what other people have told you you are. So I work with all these kids who say, I can't do anything, I'm a failure, this won't work. And I say, leave that outside. We're not going to deal with this adopted kid. We're going to work with you. You are talented, you are extraordinary, you are unique, and it's going to work.
How important is talent?
That's an interesting question. I just used the word talent. I'm not sure. I think passion and determination means much more. There are very people who may be not very talented who have done extraordinary things in life. And there are people who are incredibly talented who have just failed at the first hurdle. So I don't know that that is so important. It can help if you're trying to get into a big company or whatever, if someone thinks you're talented. But there's so many things you can do that rely more on your personality, your passion, your determination. These are the things that get you ahead.
How do you see passion? If you see someone dance, okay, maybe like a test in a way, an audition, you look at this person and then how do you see?
It's very interesting. When I was working with professionals, especially in musicals and so on, I would have all these girls and guys come along, all with their makeup and all done up and so on. And they would dance and dance and dance. And I would give them a really tough time, and they loved it. They did a real class. And I would give them some sequences to do. And then they would line up, and the director would sort of look, we called it tits and teeth. And he said, right, you are the good height, you are good height, you've got good figure, and you know, whatever. We'll take you, you, and you. And they were often the least talented of the lot. And I would say to them in the end, when I went to the auditions, I said, look, I am going to give you the best I can give you, and I will choose, you know, from you who. But I said, I can't do anything about the director who's going to come along and just going to make arbitrary decisions based on how you look. I told them that. I said, I can't do anything. So for me, again, it's just seeing someone who has a hunger. Someone who has a hunger, who wants to do what you're doing, wants to learn, who puts everything into it and isn't trying to sort of do some superficial impression, but you start to see that they're really into what they do. They want to do it. And so I think that's how I kind of judge the professionals.
That all sounds a bit like you do something different from others. And what is it what you give the dancers, the people you meet?
Trust. I mean, I'm looking for people who are passionate, who love what they do, and who are prepared to work hard to achieve it. And very often, not in the professional world, I mean in the ballet or the contemporary world, but certainly in the musical theatre world, it's not what people are looking for, it's how they look on stage. It's just something superficial, that they look glamorous and whatever. But I can't give them that stuff. I say, we're going to do a real class, we're going to do some choreography, we're going to whatever. And that's how I see with professionals. And the same with when I said about Dance Theatre of Harlem, I saw Stephanie and I just thought, this girl wants to dance. She's hungry. She has this beauty shone out of her just because of this passion. And I said, I have to have her. And Mitchell was shocked. And he said, well, the principal dancer, she said, okay, if that's who he wants, then I have to give it. And he said he took her in the company. And that's how I kind of see, I feel somehow.
What does all this give back to you?
Oh, I mean, especially in the later years, but it means that I have an enormous privilege of being something that sets people free in their lives. I'm part of the process that I can set them free. And it's a great privilege, you know. It's a wonderful feeling to be part of that.
Did you experience that, like that people come to you, they want to work with you? So far we heard about, I choose this, and this person. Was it the other way around?
It's normally, it's a combination. So let's take young people. The school will decide, or the orchestra, usually nowadays, decides that they want me to do a piece. And they will send me, say, 3 Shostakovich pieces. They're saying, we're doing a 3 Shostakovich season. Choose one of these pieces, if you like, and then we will take kids from different schools and come for 3, 4, 5 weeks and work with the different schools. So we're going to make a big performance with the orchestra. This is usually what happens. So mostly the kids that come to me don't want to do it. You know, the teachers have decided to put their names forward. They want to be part of it. The kids come in and they, whatever, especially the boys. So I have a very special way with them. They come in and I stand at one end of the studio and I said, find a place to stand. And the girls come to the front and the boys stand at the back. I say, okay, stay there. Then I go to the other end. I say, turn around. I have all the boys in the front. Great. But then there are also projects which I want to initiate. So, for instance, in the Berlin Phil project, Right of Spring, when I was asked to do that, I said no because I'd set up an initiative with kids with very special needs, physical and psychological needs, with young, difficult teenagers who wouldn't go to school. And I was determined that this would work if I put them together. And all the teachers said, you can't, these kids are too dangerous, you can't put them with the vulnerable kids, and you can't put these kids with them. I said, wait, I'm going to do it. So somebody gave me the chance, and I was on a roll. It worked. It was brilliant because the older kids suddenly became role models and were very proud. And the younger kids didn't care who these older kids were. They were just big guys and girls working with them. So it was an amazing thing, and it changed a lot. Started in Northern Ireland, and I wanted to continue with that. And I said, I haven't got time to go to the Berlin Phil, and I didn't know who they were, and Simon Rattle I'd heard of, and whatever. But anyway, he said, come, and I went, and that's his whole story.
You worked with prisoners too?
Yes.
How did that come?
I worked with young offenders in Holloway, which at the time was the biggest women's young offenders prison, where a lot of young women had been persuaded to be mules to carry drugs into Britain and been caught at customs. So I worked with them, and I worked also with young offenders in the north of England, men as well. And it was very interesting because they were great people. They were people who were hurting. I realized all of them were hurting. Something had gone wrong, something had blocked their experience, they were blocked, and some of them were violent, especially the men. They were never, they threatened me a little bit, and whatever. But I got in there with them, and it was very strange with the men's prison, the young offenders, that normally you have a security guard at the door watching you, and there's an alarm bell you can press if you're in trouble, which I didn't know about. And eventually they just saw me there, and they just went out and had a cup of tea and left me with them. And it was a very funny story, I remember, because we worked in the chapel. And one day the chaplain came and said, look, you know, this is a chapel and it's really disturbing for me next door hearing the language. And I said, well, you know what they are, these young guys, you know how they speak. He said, not their language, your language.
Okay.
And the women were great. And the thing that I did was I said, I don't, and this was very controversial, very controversial. They did projects where they were dance or theatre mostly, which focused on what you do after you leave prison, or how to cope being a single mother in prison, or how to cure your drug addiction in prison. And in Holloway prison, they had every month what they called a marketplace, and all the girls were herded in their own words, and there were stalls set up, you know, drug addiction and this and reoffending and whatever. And I had a stall, it just said dancers wanted. And they came and said, what's this? What's this? And I didn't. The chaplain wanted to tell, not the chaplain, the prison officer wanted me to, you know, find out about their background. I said, their background's immaterial. I mean, they don't know me, I don't know them. Why would I want to know what their background? Everybody else who had been, he said, for the last 50 or so projects, had needed to know the background of the people they worked with. I said, what's that got to do with anything? You know, it's just a story. I just want to work with them.
How easy is it to teach someone dancing who has maybe never danced before?
It's easy. I mean, well, no. All right. The first few days, first week or 2 weeks, it's a little hairy. It's a little difficult because they don't want to do it and they don't trust you at first. Mm-hmm. And you have to win their trust. You have to convince them that you know that they are going to be amazing because they don't feel they are. It's too difficult. I'm going to look stupid. They say, I can't do this. I said, why would you be able to do it? I've only just shown you. You know, it takes a few days. I mean, why do you think you should be able to do it now? I said, I'm not working where you are now. I'm working to where you're going to be in 3 or 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's all going to be hard.
And that is something, I think is very important in every life, that you look a little bit ahead.
Yes. I just say to them, you know, I'm not going to where you are. I'm going to bring you to where I am. And where I am is seeing you on stage doing an extraordinary performance. And you will do it.
And after a while, they trusted you.
Yes, absolutely. Because they realized that nothing will change me. You know, I'm going to be there. And sometimes, you know, about maybe 2 or 3 weeks in, I try it out. When I've had enough and they're maybe not behaving so well, I say, I've had enough. You know, I got paid, I'm going out, I'm going to have a coffee, I'll decide if I come back. Or panic breaks loose because they realize they've invested so much and they can play against me and against me and against me, but then if I go, what happens? Mm-hmm. And suddenly this is their piece. So I go out and have a coffee and take my assistants out, and the teacher or whoever will say, I'll talk to them. I say, don't say anything to them. It's up to them. I will come back later, but don't tell them. And then I'll come back about an hour later, and then someone standing at the door says, you can't come in yet, we're not ready, we're not ready, we're not ready. I say, okay. And I come in, I sit down, they're all at the side, music goes on. Beautiful, beautiful rehearsal. I say, okay.
How is it if you decide, okay, it's a nice piece, good work, everybody is fine, but it doesn't fit in somewhere, so you just leave it. How is that for the people?
Well, I never really had that. I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, sometimes I get to places where I don't know what to do, so I just do the first thing that comes in my head, and it works. I can make it work.
So everybody is always happy when you're finished?
Oh, it's wonderful. I mean, except for me, I mean, I just sit back and my job is over, and I sit in the audience at the back and I watch them, and I can see, you know, they are working and working and wanting to do it and performing beautifully, each to their own. You know, I say, as long as you are doing your best, it's going to show. It's going to help the performance, and then at the end, the audience goes crazy. Every time, they always will. I mean, they're just wonderful, wonderful performers. And they come out, and I say, when you come out, you don't wave, you don't do anything, you stand and you bow and you take the applause. You've had your moment, this is the audience moment. And they're like this, and they go off and they shout, and then the audience calls them back on, and after about 6 times they say, oh, we have to go on again. They're so funny. And they're jubilant, and something has changed. Something has changed. They've achieved something that they never really, even to the end, believed possible. Because it's only when the music starts and you're backstage and that music starts that the adrenaline kicks in, and everything that I've taught them will kick in. It just kicks in suddenly. And they're almost doing it without almost knowing they're doing it. And they're wonderful. I mean, sometimes I look at a piece and say, they didn't quite reach the potential, and I just go, that's my fault. That's my fault. They have it, but I didn't find the key for this person or that person. So I take that. They do their best. And I mean, it sounds a bit arrogant, but I never had a performance where the audience didn't go crazy.
That's good.
And the kids just stood there, and they have to absorb it, and they can't react. You know, they can't wave as they go off or smile. Your job is to bow and take that, and it feels. And they go off, and then you hear them, and they're shouting and shouting and shouting with absolute, you know, they just can't believe what they've done.
You once said that only happy people can make other people happy.
Yeah.
If we think about happiness, what is happiness?
I think it's fulfillment. It's when you yourself feel fulfilled, that you feel. I mean, I don't think you can make other people happy if you haven't got that in yourself. I think you have to feel that you are fulfilled, that you're doing what you need, and I think that passes on to other people. You can then pass to other people. But if you're not feeling that, you can't artificially just give it to others. I think they absorb it from you.
If we talk about Scotland, where you lived for a long time, this happiness, this fulfillment, you were in a surrounding where you had many kind of arts, you told me. That was a movement in a way that came together. Let us know about this.
Well, it's strange. So I went to Scotland to get away from London, which I was fed up with, and B, to live with my lover, who was working up there. He was a pipeline welder. And he said, why don't we buy a house in Scotland? Because for 19,000 we could buy a big manse, a big vicarage with lots of land and walled garden, and we could buy a little flat in Islington in London for the same amount. So I went there, and it was great, because for the first time I felt I was part of a community. I was in the village. I mean, everybody said, oh, 2 gay men living in the village and whatever. But they loved us. They just thought it was great, and we got on great. And I was very happy there. I was going away to work like in New York or whatever. But the rest of the time I could grow my vegetables and have my garden, which I always wanted, and look after the bees and everything else. So I was very happy in the countryside. I was back in the countryside, but at the same time being what I wanted to be as a choreographer. And at the time, I mean, nobody knew really what I did. They didn't understand what I did. And one day, a friend of mine, she said, I'm going to the art centre in Dundee because they're offering some drawing classes. Will you come with me? And I said, yeah, okay, why not? And I went, and then I saw on the wall, creative dance class teacher needed. I said,
That was your part.
I said, what's creative dance? I mean, I'm professional, what's creative dance? You have to be a tree or something or whatever, like, whatever. And the guy said, yeah, we have this group of 1 man and 4 women, and they meet every week, and the teacher is pregnant and she's had to stop, and we don't have a teacher. And my friend said, you could do that, you're a choreographer. I thought, he said, oh, could you? I said, okay, I'll do it for a few weeks. And I did, and about 3 months later, I had over 100 people, men, women, God knows what, old ladies, and I was teaching terrible stuff. I was teaching like ballet contemporary and, sit in second position even if you're 9 months pregnant. And when I had these old ladies who'd come across the room holding on to each other. But very quickly I started to learn that we don't need all that, it's something else. And I started to see people change. People just absolutely changed. They came out, they became confident. I said, wow, we're onto something here.
Is that something that you described as you can change your life in a dance class?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you can change your life at any moment, whatever you're doing, if you're just open and aware and realizing what's happening. I think a lot of people just don't see it. They just go along and say, oh, this is all the same.
Why do you think is that?
Sorry?
Why do you think is that? Why don't they see?
I think people are just stressed. I think life is just so stressful for people. And they don't think that there could be some kind of thing waiting for them. That, for me, when I was young, I was different from my peers because they all said, yeah, I want to have a car and I want to have a good job and I want to have money and I want to have this and that. And I had nothing of that. I had no interest. All I kept thinking was, why am I here? I'm not here just to eat up resources, which someone else could need. Why am I here? And this was my obsession when I was young. What am I supposed to do? I must be something I'm supposed to do. Otherwise, I'm just eating food that could be used for someone else and whatever. So I was kind of different in that way. Why? I don't really know, but that's how I was. And I think a lot of people are just stressed out. Mm-hmm. And, the thing of the moment. And they sort of quickly get married and they have children and they have responsibilities and they have a mortgage and whatever. Who can be free in that sort of situation? So maybe I was just lucky I was free. After I started this piece, there were some young students came from St Andrews University in Fife, and they joined the classes, and they said, oh, we want to do a project at the university with you, our dance club. And I said, okay, and the university said yes, and they employed me to come, and I made a big piece for them. And it came to the attention of a woman, Kirsty Adam, who was head of the arts in Fife. And this was an organization that looked after arts in schools, arts in the community especially, and it was visual art and theatre and this kind of thing, but not dance. And Kirsty saw what I was doing, and she said, every year we appoint a dance artist in residence to teach kids graffiti or to make theatre with them or whatever. Maybe we could have a dance artist in residence. That's a new idea. And I said, okay. And she went to the council, and they said, all right, we trust you. And the education officer was a dance enthusiast. And they said, okay, give it a chance. And so they employed me, actually in the end, for 4 years. And my brief was to use my skills, passion in any way that would benefit the community. And I was paid. 4 months of the year, I was free to choose to go away in America or somewhere else, but the rest of the time, I was teaching in Fife. And I started an adult company of 5, and I took the National Youth Dance Festival, which had just started, to Scotland, and we taught in schools all over Scotland, and in the islands and the highlands and the borders, and there was activity happening, but it was very isolated. People were not taking a lot of notice. So I sort of saw, in Glasgow, there was a group of 3 schools that were working in dance. And I saw Margaret Morris Movement, and Scottish Ballet had just started with their Steps Out program of repertoire, taking it into schools to show the kids. So I pulled all these people together and I said, okay, we're going to meet and we're going to really get a movement started. We're going to meet every couple of months. We're not going to discuss funding. If we're on course, it will come. We're going to discuss philosophy, why we're doing this. We're going to work together. I started Fife Youth Dance Company, which was extraordinary company of young people.
How did these people influence each other?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Fife Youth was a tremendous influence because our young people were so open, and our young men and our young women. I mean, the young men joined because they heard there were some girls there, and you could probably pull a few birds, as they said. But they came, and in a short time, they weren't interested in that. They wanted to work with the best partner. Very passionate. And actually, nearly all the boys went on to be professional dancers. The girls, they loved it and they did it, and some went on, but not most. And Fife was suddenly flooded with these applications to go to London to the place and whatever. And they did influence each other because they swapped and they learned from each other, and they became a movement. And we went into the Edinburgh Festival.
Huh? When you started in Scotland, did you expect that development?
I don't think I didn't. I don't think I took time to think about it. It just was happening, and something was happening all the time. So it just developed so fast, and And what happened was that our young men and a couple of our young girls went to London and trained, and then there was nothing for them to come back to. So I went to the Arts Council and said, look, we've trained these young people, they want to come back to Scotland, we need a dance company, a professional contemporary dance company. And the arts officer said, well, this wasn't in our plan, but I see your point, we'd better fix it quickly. So they fixed with Dundee and to pay half, and they paid half, because Dundee Rep Theatre was kind of failing, and they said, we need a reason to keep it going. So they said, you take this dance company. And so we started with 3 dancers and then 6 dancers, Dundee Rep Dance Company, which was the first, really professional contemporary dance company, which is now a Scottish contemporary dance company years later.
So,
well, everything's a big surprise to me, basically.
Yeah, but people know you for what you did.
Yeah.
Do you know who you are?
Not really. This is the dilemma when COVID came. You know, I was very happy because everybody was in the same boat. I said, I relax, I go in my garden, it's fine, it'll all be fine. But when it was over, a lot of the young people I mentored sort of found their way back, but I didn't somehow. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't. I don't know what it was. And suddenly I realized, I am what I do to most people. Hundreds of people, I mean, thousands of people that I've worked with around the world. I am what I do. And now I'm not doing. And so then the question is, who are you? And I'm still grappling with that a little bit. But I give some lectures and I give some talks and I do some mentoring, and people ask to come and see me to get advice, and they're starting out and whatever. And what's nice is, because I was very rebellious against the establishment, and there are young people who feel the same way. And just say that when I started, people started to notice changes. The teachers noticed, the social workers, others, health workers, and they wanted to support us, which was great. But the problem was they all had an agenda. So they wanted you to do it this way, or that way, or that way, or this way. I said, no, I'm just an artist. I will do it my way, and I will deliver what you're looking for. So that was a big battle. And there was a lot of resistance to my not going into the area of therapy and education or whatever. I said, it's irrelevant. Now, I'm not knocking people who do that, because there are some really expert people who work, for instance, with people with disabilities. I have people with disabilities in my projects, and they just come in and we just do what we do. I don't take any notice of it, I said, they say, well, how do I do that? And I say, well, I don't know how you do it. You do it. We just make a piece. How do I stretch? I can't use my arms. I said, stretching is not about your arms. It's about an idea. It'll work.
So it's more brain work than body work.
It's about
emotional work.
Yeah, emotional work, and it is your body, because when you do this, you are stretching. Or you are falling. And then people say, everyone falls to the floor, and the person in the wheelchair, I had one girl in the wheelchair, and she said, what do? I said, well, you have to decide. Do you want to fall out of the wheelchair? Can you? She said, okay. So she fell out of the wheelchair, and then people just helped her back in, and I gave her actually a solo part. She was wonderful, being lifted and carried. She was great. She couldn't really do anything, but the guy, little Chinese guy, he manipulated her into shapes and things. She's beautiful. I just tend to ignore all that shit,
So that was about your life so far, and now we come to the future. Wir werden uns jetzt mal anschauen, was es noch so für Gedanken gibt für die Zukunft. Denn es gibt ja vieles, was sich in unserer Zukunft verändert. Und da gucken wir jetzt mal rein. So, what about the future? I know it's not easy to talk about the future in that case, but what do you think, which thoughts do you have about the future?
Well, when you ask an 81-year-old about the future, it's kind of a little strange. You don't know where you don't know where you're going. I'm worried. I'm worried about the future, because I think people are not realizing what is happening to them, especially in this age of internet and artificial intelligence, because although they can be tremendous tools for good, in my experience, most innovation ends up being in the hands of the wrong people. And I fear that we are being led into some kind of abyss where everything is known about us, where artificial intelligence, including in the arts, is poised to take over.
How do you think artificial intelligence will influence or take over art?
Well, it seems to me that there is something intrinsic about the human spirit that needs to be involved in creativity. And of course, there is always someone behind the artificial intelligence who has to decide what it does. But I have not a lot of confidence in those people. I think that everything tends to get used, and I feel that as it's used more and more to perform the tasks that we have performed, even perhaps sometimes tasks that we didn't really want to do, that we are deliberately being made obsolete, and that as time goes by, I've seen this in Britain with our Conservative government, we are sidelined, we are not important, and that benefits will be taken away, and that somehow we will become irrelevant, that we're not needed. And the elite, who are very connected around the world, I believe, wherever they are, however much they say, you know, we are Israel, we are this, we are whatever, that they are actually very much, there are few people in control.
Do you think that artificial intelligence, in terms of dancing, for example, that they can create a dance?
Yes, it can create the dance, but what does it mean?
That's the important question.
Yeah,
what does it mean? Do you think that it someday will be possible for an artificial intelligence to inspire you as a teacher, or you inspire the artificial intelligence?
A lot of artists are kind of moving there, and I wonder how long they will be inspired by it. But what it's bringing in is people who I think are plagiarizing so much of what the human spirit has achieved. And I'm worried. I think that we are losing our purpose. And as I said, although I think that there are tremendous benefits in medicine and everything, we're making tremendous strides, my fear is that it is eventually is being manipulated by the wrong people. Mm-hmm. Because I don't trust politicians, for a start.
Okay.
And I don't know if anyone does. They're not in it for us. And I fear for the future. I also watch children now who can't communicate except through their phone. You know, I go to my little cafe downstairs, and at lunchtime the kids come and they go in the cafe and they come out and they shout, and they're only doing this and this and this. They don't talk with each other, really. It's all, if it's not on here, I have nothing to talk about. And I just remember reading recently about a school teacher who took 10 of his pupils and said, I'm going to take your mobile phones away for a week. I want volunteers. So they took their phones away, and he said, sit around and talk to each other. They couldn't. They couldn't open their mouths. They were lost. And
interesting.
And I fear that people are living not here, they're living somewhere else. It's all coming from somewhere else. And they're not observing, and they're not in the moment. They're not seeing what's happening around them, or who. I mean, I love to look at people. You know, if I'm on the train or on the bus or whatever, I'm watching people, how they are. I'm kind of learning about people all the time, and about nature and what's going on in the city.
You have to learn that too.
Sorry, you have to learn it, and you know, this is an experience that I don't think you can get from this thing.
No. I think the same.
And I'm very, very nervous.
So what do you think is the most important thing for the people out there that they have to
that they come back and look at themselves, that they realize this is not the answer. It's feeding them things to keep them engaged. This is the idea. Keep you engaged, keep you engaged. Forget what's happening around you. Forget the politics, forget what's happening, forget the environment. Never worry about this. Just keep looking at this TikTok, the amusing things, the funny things. I mean, my friends show me, say, look what I saw on TikTok. I go, you know, I have, I think, a great sense of humor, and I have thousands of jokes, some of them very suspect. Nobody else does. They just
They look at it.
these stupid things. They say, "What's that?" It's not a very good joke. I don't know where we're going.
Do you think focus is something that is important?
Ooh, focus is everything, and it's the most important thing I teach. When I bring any group of people, whether it's from Gaza or West Bank or from prisons or from wherever, bring them into a room, the first thing I teach them is focus. And focus means to divest of everything, to stand with feet parallel, stand, let your arms go. Don't have your fingers doing this, pointing back at yourself. Let everything relax, let go, stand tall. Think that your feet are rooted into the earth, that this is the trunk, these are the branches. Stand, go somewhere where you want to go in your mind and be there and just be still. And then at some point, you can make a movement, and that's dance, because you intended to make it. Dance is movement which you intended to make, not just because I do this without knowing, but it's a thing. And I have found with the most, with kids and adults who cannot stand still for a moment, that I can just get them to stand. And it's a revelation. And from that moment, they come in and I start the class and I say, okay, everybody, focus. And they start. I say, now let's start the class. And we begin. And if I can get that in the first few days, I've got them. I don't have to worry after that. Focus, they know what it is.
How can someone not dancing focus without using the dance and without having you on the side?
Well,
if people look at us and...
For instance, I see people on the train, on their phone, everywhere, doing this, something this, and I'm like this. Same like you are, just like this. That's focus. That's not all this other stuff that's going on around that's completely useless.
Just try to sit still for minutes.
Just be still. Yeah, and you know, I think meditation is also a very good thing for this, which I don't really do, but maybe I am meditating. But you know, I sit on my balcony for half an hour, and I watch the bees on my tomato plant, and it's wonderful. And I don't do this or this or this or this. I just watch the bees. That's focus. And then when I want to get up, I get up, and I'm in focus. So.
And that's intentional.
That's intentional, yeah.
I think that was a wonderful word for the end of our show.
Thank you.
And that the people can take that home. I thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Absolutely great life, telling about it, telling your secrets, and that was fantastic.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Soweit die Lehren eines großen Lebens und natürlich auch ein bisschen was wir mitnehmen können für uns selbst. Ich bedanke mich fürs Zuschauen und ich hoffe, dass Sie wieder dabei sind, wenn ich meine nächste Einladung ausspreche, immer am ersten Montag eines Monats. Und bis dahin wünsche ich Ihnen eine gute Zeit und bis bald in diesem Theater.